Khaled. But first, I'm going to address the culture of entrepreneurship. We talked about legal issues, accounting issues, and the different kinds of support that exist. But when we talk about the culture of entrepreneurship, part of it uh, is linked to having templates, which shows how people into partnership and where the content exists or where mentors exist. So let me start with Khaled, and I'm going to ask all the panelists from our own perspectives how to enhance this culture, not only the image but also the content. I second him in the point. I completely agree that the media point of view is very important. Because abroad, Bill Gates is used as a celebrity icon. There is a stigma that businessmen are evil figures. So part of it is not going to be addressed through education, rather through the media. And in the series, they are usually depicted as thieves, as cigar holding fat thieves. It's not about demonizing the whole community. Not all of them are good, neither all of them are bad. So when we started in '93, when we started, the mindset was that you went for a startup because you failed to find a job. Now it's better, but the vision of a successful rich man is still negative. For the ecosystem, Khaled, myself, and a number of people, we started to have an EVI. Just as in the States, you find a lot of standards for shareholder agreements, but the people people already understand the CVC. Around 90 or 80% people already understand the norm, and we are talking about the fringe. This is where the United States is at. We tried to go with this initiative 4 years ago, but my point of view that the ecosystem works only when we have interlinkages. The blue chip shares are limited in size. You should have Series A, Series B, Series C, and there is an infinite amount of types because some companies reach Series F. So yes, in order to issue these series, there must be a vote, but I do not see it happening anytime soon. I think if we can find new kinds, I think that would be a good experiment. What do you think about the culture of entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship in Egypt. Not in the sense of SMEs, but with the huge corporations. Germany, with its huge economy, 70% are medium sized. This is a given, but this is But when we talk about entrepreneurship, we're talking about high-risk gain, this that start from scratch, and after 5 years they sold for 100 million. Um, so the problem is lies with the culture. But now the problem is that we're talking more than we're doing. We talk the talk, but we're not walking the walk. We're very good with words, but my concern here that over the past 2 years, it has become now more of a talk, not about the efforts being made. So there must be balance. I completely agree that the media plays a role. I myself was part of it, and I found that the impact, particularly in Upper Egypt, was good. And people sitting in the cafes were following, and they actually changed that channel that was airing a football match. Because a woman from Upper Egypt was competing on the show. So when you have entrepreneurship as part of the coffee shop culture in Upper Egypt, that is a change. And we can deliver this message to the households. I have known people who actually encourage their youngsters to sit with them to watch Mr. Khaled on TV. It's not about Mr. Khaled, but he saw the jurors and people competing. So this culture, in my point of view, is of high value, and it's not going to be part of the school system, because the schools and universities have very limited scope, but the media is open-ended and it reaches everywhere. So the culture should be of that of action, and should be covered properly by the media. And it also should show to people who the how to spot the entrepreneurial qualities in yourself. Everybody wants to play football and become Mohamed Salah, but how many actually will become a Mohamed Salah? 1 out of 1 million? It's the same with entrepreneurs. I do not want to exaggerate, but it's the same idea. If I'm 50 millions wanted to start a business, but who is eligible to start it, grow it, and to sell it at in millions? So how can I spot these people, and where I stand now? Should I start first? So the general culture could be conveyed not through school, but specialized seminars, and to the point. I wanted, I have a positive commentary. All the efforts are very positive. They may be slow, and we launched Masr Tabda, or Egypt Starts, funded by the British government, and run by Flight 6000, and it puts an emphasis on traveling and to hold info sessions. In its first session, we received 1,200 applications, mostly from Cairo. I'm sorry, 46% came from out of Cairo, which was a good indicator. And another indicator for culture for female entrepreneurs, then 20% were women. It's early to identify who's going to succeed and who's not, but the idea is about taking the initiative. 20% is a high figure, particularly that the international number is around 11%. I agree with Dr. Khaled that The show, the TV show was highly viewed, and people who were completely out of the domain and who had nothing to do with entrepreneurship were following the series. From the GEM report, the perception, we look at the perception of entrepreneurship in Egypt and in the fact that it's getting better. The stereotype of a businessman, of a fat cigar holding businessman, this is the stereotype. But the stereotype of an entrepreneur is usually that of a young graduate, a technology savvy. It's a different image, and we need to enhance this image. We need to make it more realistic. We should talk about failure as much as we talk about success. We should also address the risks involved, but we need to cultivate this image. Before we receive a round of final questions, let me listen to Ms. Gehane. I agree with you, but the role models of women as entrepreneurs should be enhanced as well. On Mehwar TV station, there was a panel on a group of women who made innovations, and it made a splash. So if we can promote women as entrepreneurs, that's going to be a huge effect. There's a point that you raised. People are very afraid of failure, although Dr. Khaled said that his first attempt failed, but it gave birth to a huge success. So we should not deal with failure as a taboo. This is a major change of culture that should be introduced, and this could happen when Mr. Khaled and Khaled Bichara can talk about their failures. A critical point is our language of failure. Was it the startup that failed, or was the man who that failed? It's very important to say that this company failed, which is normal. But we usually stigmatize the person themselves. We say Khaled failed. So the language used in the media or even in person interaction should be changed. A company hit the ground. This is no problem. We're going to receive a couple of 3 questions.
And there is something that bothers me. Fear of failure creates a state that the companies fail, but they do not exit the market. They are fighting for nothing. Maybe they are making £3,000 a month and they are losing clients. It's evident that they cannot make it, but they feel it really embarrassing to say so, or to recognize that they failed. I talked to one of the people and tell them, let's shed the light on the stars of startups in 2011 and see where they are now. How many succeeded, how many failed? Not even one failed. And I'm not going to name these companies, but in my own point of view, 80% failed, but they did not exit the market. From my own point of view, they are wasting their time, money, and energy because they cannot face themselves. They cannot say it's enough and I should move on. Yes, and this is very relevant. If you're going to fail, fail fast in order to be able to move on. You need to be able to tell would that have a market or not. I'll take 2 questions from the table there at the back, and then we will close this session. My name is Alia, and I work in Rise Up, and I'm leading the project you referred to. We are collecting all the entrepreneurs and the different stakeholders of the ecosystem to cater for their needs. The project is called Startup Manifesto, and we will launch 2 days before the Rise Up Summit. This document outlines all the challenges in the ecosystem, like lack of funding, human capital issues, and unconventional ways of financing. There are many problems outlined in the document, and we are working now on bringing together different stakeholders of the ecosystem to be able to work with us, to include also the government, the private sector, to solve the issues. I can explain that more if you want. That would be really a pleasure. If you don't know Rise Up Summit will be held in the Greek camps on December 8th to the 9th, 2018. And this is a very good introduction to the ecosystem. This is really, really helpful, and we will publish this manifesto, and it will help you a lot. My name is Ala Zahir. I'm from Vodafone. I have not heard anything on corporates. Is there any role for the corporates to play? Because many corporates are playing a role in organizing incubators. They also help with the equity investment. So my question is, what the role that corporates can play? Spot on. Yes. We will receive another question from Dr. Abla, and then we will give it back to the panelists. It's not a question, it's more of a comment. Very brief comments on female entrepreneurs. We have a guide, an updated guide to help women to become entrepreneurs. I just want to talk about that. Fear of failure is there, but what do they exactly fear? Is it because people will stigmatize and shame them? Or is it because of the bankruptcy law, because they cannot exit the market? We should have millions of innovative ideas that fail and then people start again, but we do not facilitate this process. So it's not the problem of the society, it's not the problem of the youth, it's the problem of the state. I come from the school that we should criticize things. That's why I say we should have a good structure, encouraging people to try things confidently, to fail, to start up again. Yes, Hona Shabab is a great show, but is it enough to change the conception of the people? Is it enough? No, we need the law or the government to play. We need to review things because Miss Mida cannot do everything on its own, because you cannot combine drafting laws with financing. This should be distinct. We need institutional reform, and then we can call upon the media to change these stereotypes and stigmatization. Yes, let's go for concluding comments. And we can answer the questions posed, like the one on corporates. Let's start with Ms. Gehane. I think it's really important, since we have a lot of experts on the panel, then people have very high expectations. And we don't want to say that entrepreneurship is problematic in Egypt. No, there are a lot of promising indicators, and the GEM report on Egypt is pointing to the success of Egypt. We're doing really very well. Maybe you're a bit over ambitious. because you're in the midst of it and you started really early on. Yes, we need to change the culture, we need to change the policies, but these are long-term reforms. We cannot expect a change to happen overnight. But we are thriving. That's my own point of view as far as I'm concerned. Entrepreneurs, of course, are greedy and they want to achieve results more. No, but we're not doing well. Because we started at the same time Dubai started, and they are far ahead of us. So, with all due respect, I think that yes, we have success and we owe it to the country when we started our own companies. When Flat Six Lab started in Egypt, we did that with the Egyptian youth. So, we can spend 7 hours talking about the good points, but what we are doing is we're doing ourselves a pat on the shoulder. But this is not the point. We want to change things to be able to move forward. Otherwise, we will stay the way we are. The same way people hail the pyramids, but we cannot do something similar now. Of course, I'm optimistic since I'm an entrepreneur. The ecosystem is not very helpful in my own point of view, but a lot to be desired. The pace is faster all over the world, and we shouldn't say that we will wait and see, because we will not be able to catch up later. Because years ago, we thought that entrepreneurs will not be able to travel to Germany because they cannot speak German, and they will have issues issuing their visa. But that was not the case. So we need to change the perception, and we are lagging behind. That's my own point of view. As for corporate, just like Khaled said, each stakeholder has a role to play. Yes, some corporate start incubators, start VCs. If corporates want to help entrepreneurs, is to become their customers. Whenever they come to showcase a product or a service, please accept to work with them. Don't tell them no, you're very young or you lack experience. Whenever I went to speak to corporates long time ago, they told me no, it's better deal with someone who is aged with much experience. But the role of the corporate is to be customers to entrepreneurs, because they will help them much better since they are not part of the bureaucracy. So please, if you want to help entrepreneurs, become their customers, and don't look down upon them because they are young and inexperienced. First general comment, I do not want to leave an impression that I'm pessimistic. I am putting my own money in this ecosystem. So I'm not pessimistic and I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not wasting my money. No, thanks God. I invested with many people, and there are many success stories. So it's not about optimism or pessimism. The question is quantitative. Is this up to the potential of Egypt? So we need to compare here. You want to compare Egypt to Israel? Okay. You want to compare Egypt to Malaysia, to Turkey, to evaluate if this is Egypt's potential or no. In my own point of view, no. This is not Egypt's potential. We have much potential that is untapped, but with perseverance, we're very resilient as entrepreneurs. We fall and we get up, so we will thrive. When it comes to corporates, it's very important to answer this question. Yes, you can be a customer. Corporate VCs is a mixed blessing. Intel, IBM have corporate VCs separate from their day-to-day management. They start investments that can yield strategic returns. The few attempts in Egypt were not that specific or clear cut. That's why they get lost. People invest 2 million Egyptian pounds in this VCs, but my annual revenue is 1 billion. So that's why we should have clear-cut criteria, and there is a good start in Nahdat Masr, which is a big company in the publishing sector. They started an incubator for education-oriented initiatives. Maybe النساجون الشرقيون can started a VC incubator for textiles startups. So we need people who are well versed in their own fields to start these initiatives. Also, we started to see that in a small scale, corporates should be incubators for entrepreneurs. So maybe someone working inside the company, like Coca-Cola, for example, they organized a competition among the employees to come up with creative ideas outside the scope of their daily tasks. So they did that and they give awards. So they are already employed, but they want to have or to foster the culture of entrepreneurship. And they help people start their own businesses with seed funds. Corporates can play such a role really well. But will or are corporates in Egypt convinced of that? Probably not, because they care for daily operations. They do not have the luxury of R&D and VC. And multinationals might have room to think and reflect, and they have international exposure, but we still need to do more when it comes to the corporate's role. That's why we do not engage them in the ecosystem. We do not consider them a main stakeholder or a main partner, and this is a mistake in our reasoning. But thank you for the question. I agree with Dr. Khaled and Mr. Khaled. Of course, corporates have a role to play because there is an appetite for funding. We have tickets, we have seeding funding, but there is a gap in between. We want to activate the network. We need a network to cover this ticket size, and also we want to engage corporate. That's why in last October we organized a business network event. We asked the entrepreneurs to identify the corporates they want to reach, and we organized one day event for corporates to come here to sit with the entrepreneurs, and we will try to mainstream that and roll it out every 6 months. And we want corporates to be open to come and to talk to the young and to be their first customers. This would really be helpful to sustain themselves, to expand, to be able to raise funds from a VC or a bigger ticket size. It's essential. Thank you so much, Marie. I'd like to give a general and brief comment. I'm very optimistic, but I'm also concerned. I agree with Khaled that the potential of Egypt is great and it's untapped. 2 weeks ago, I talked to a company, one of the biggest counseling services in Dubai, organized a study for Dubai to be a hub for entrepreneurship. And they had an interview with me. How can we attract successful Egyptian startups to be based in Dubai? Bluntly, that's what they want to do. For legal services, for incubators, for everything. How can we make these startups based in Dubai, and how can we subsidize everything? We want companies to come from Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon because they are really talented countries, and they do this bluntly. They told me, yes, I wish Dubai the best of success. They are really good when it comes to the business map, and we are benefiting from them. But think with me, I have companies coming from the universities. I have people investing money in these companies, and then these companies will be based in Dubai, and they will exit from Dubai, and they will pay taxes. I don't know where, and all the high value will be in Dubai, and Egypt will be a backstage for low-cost activities. This is what we're after? Given the talent Egyptians have, is this what we're after? Also, when it comes to the labor division or the distribution of roles, the state has something big to do. Not the state should not wear the hat of the private sector. The role should focus more on legislation. There are certain laws that block the way for startups. The CBE tries, but still. You cannot operate with drones in Egypt, for example. That would be a national security issue. Also, we have limited access to certain data. So people working in certain sectors will feel that they are stuck. We need to unlock that. That is the role of the state. They shouldn't provide services that can be easily provided by private sector or NGOs. No. The state should help private sector and NGOs to provide these services. This is very important, that should be taken into consideration. Also, the role of the media. We should change the idea of having a fat man smoking cigars, smoking drugs. No, we should have the image of the young, hard-working people achieving success. People face limitations, face restrictions, and we need to limit that. We need non-profit organizations to help entrepreneurs. Corporations like Vodafone should be the first customer. We need to look at the procurement rules, because by design they exclude entrepreneurs. Why so? Because the company should have financial statement, should have at least 3 years of experience, should give you a track record, should have financial collaterals or security guarantees. So this excludes startups. We should take that into consideration, and maybe with an initiative by the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies, we can have a second look at that. Also, when it comes to tenders law, they have a certain percentage for SMEs, but it's not really on ground. It's still ink on paper. So maybe think tanks and research centers can lobby and advocate for that. Well, of course, this labor division is really important, and throughout the day we will showcase many experiences. And now I'd like to thank you so much for attending the first session, and I wish you a very informative and enjoyable sessions.